Ladies and gents, PepperBelly here, and in this slightly late overdue video, I want to be discussing the recent update for Squad, which is version 4, which is actually a pretty extensive update in a few areas that are mandatory for games. One of which was optimization for AMD users, which was actually kind of critical because a lot of people who had AMD CPUs were having poor performance across the board, and although this is mostly due to Epic's engine, Unreal Engine 4, having problems with AMD hardware at the moment, they were still able to somewhat optimize it to give AMD users a better, more smooth experience, although the problem isn't going to be completely fixed yet. You still got quite a ways to go, especially engine updates. I know 4.11 is supposed to be able to actually rectify AMD hardware issues, and once they upgrade to that, plus additional optimization on top of that, AMD users should be right up there with Intel users in terms of performance, which should be good. Next up, they actually added something that is pretty critical, and that is an anti-cheat system. It's very early in its implementation, meaning it still has a lot of ways to go to actually be able to catch on to people who are actually using cheats or hacks or whatever to basically ruin the game for everybody else. Now, a lot of people were complaining about cheaters. I've only encountered one in the 50 some hours I have in this game, which is surprising considering how much people are complaining about it. For me, the encounter I had was basically an M203 that was firing fully automatic, which sounds fun as hell, but obviously is incredibly cheap and is no doubt cheating. Nobody can fire an M203 fully automatic like it's a machine gun. It sounds cool when it's going off and it's blowing everybody up, but I mean, again, it's cheating. It's just not good. So that's the only encounter I've ever had with actual cheaters. Other than that, it's been pretty much straightforward and smooth sailing for me, at least. I know I'm not going to discredit people who have had issues and have run into those people, because they are definitely out there, and it's good that this new anti-cheat system is put in there to prevent that from happening. It's going to take a while for it to fully take effect, but once it does, it should be a far smoother and better experience for everybody involved in the game. As you can probably tell, looking at the screen right now, the maps have gotten updates. Fool's Road has gotten industrial complexes and estates, and Cora has gotten some expansions and more fine details and building structures implemented. Either way, it's really cool, and I can tell you right now that it's probably one of my favorite parts of this update. Running through these two-story buildings in CQB operations is kind of my favorite thing to do ever, and having that in the game now with these two-story buildings operating within the context of these new estate buildings, it's just so much more fun and intense. Because now you have actual vertical gameplay to worry about versus just running across open fields. Actually clearing rooms and having to secure buildings just feels so much better and kind of brings out the urban operations that this game has been lacking. Although it's very small and it's only like 2 or 3 buildings within the actual estate itself, it does differentiate the gameplay enough to make things more interesting. And me being a guy who likes close quarters, tight CQB style stuff, this has scratched that itch and it makes it a hell of a lot more fun. And I definitely hope to see more urban type of environments in the future for more urban ops type of gameplay, worrying about buildings and windows and doors and securing rooms and all that stuff, because again, my favorite thing to do ever. Moving on, Russian weapons now actually have optics, just like the ACOG for the US Army. Now the Russians and the militia and everybody has the cast-stand rifle optic, which is basically a magnified optic that is pretty much similar to what an ACOG. It functions in a similar way to an ACOG. You're not going to be sniping with it, although it does give you that nice additional range that you require to engage targets far away. Now, one thing I am actually going to complain about that I'm sure has been discussed many times on the forums is the actual sensitivities themselves of both sights, both optics. If you're using the ACOG or you're using the cast-stand rifle optic, is that the sensitivity when you're actually zooming in with them will be different between the two. And one thing that I do, and a lot of people also did to remedy the strangely, ridiculously slow sensitivity when you're actually using the ACOG back in the day, was they would go into the files themselves and you would change the FOV scaling to basically 0. You would turn it off. And that would allow you to have a 1-to-1 mouse ratio in terms of sensitivity. So you would actually be able to zoom in with the optic, and you would have the same sensitivity as you would have if you weren't zoomed in. And this allows you to have basically faster target acquisition. There's no hiccuping within the movement. It's not slow and sluggish. It's perfect. Of course, it's a little bit too fast because obviously you're zooming in, and it makes the optic feel a lot more sensitive because your FOV is shrinking. And obviously, if you move a high sensitivity mouse with a really low FOV, you'll notice that sensitivity, because of magnification, feels a lot higher, even though it's exactly the same, because there's no scaling. The problem here is that because the ACOG and the Cashtan have different sensitivities, the ACOG feels fine, but then the Cashtan feels insanely sensitive. So I really feel that the developers over at Offworld Industries need to come up with a way of making the FOV scaling feel more natural, like most shooters out there, because having it go far too sensitive or not sensitive at all is just not good enough. You need to be able to tweak it, at least have a slider to allow us to tweak the actual magnified optic sensitivity, which a lot of games have done. You know, you look at Ground Branch has magnified optic sensitivity, it has regular iron sight sensitivity, and then it has the actual regular moving around sensitivity. And that's nice, but at the same time, a lot of games actually traditionally put in proper mathematics equations that determine what the sensitivity should be like to make it as streamlined as possible to feel completely natural without overdoing it across the board based on your FOV. And currently the FOV scaling in this game is pretty bad, which is why a lot of people tend to turn it off, but at the same time, it's a compromise between either having like your sight being way too slow or way too fast. And adjusting your DPI on the fly is just not good enough, although I have a sniper button on the side of my Proteus Core mouse that allows me to drop my sensitivity, my DPI right on the fly. It's not good enough. It's annoying. It's really annoying to deal with trying to drop that sensitivity, which just makes it's still too fast. You know, even if I drop it by like 500 to 800 DPI, it's still too fast. And that's just bad. You know what I mean? That's just a little bit excessive. So hopefully they can get around at some point in the future and deal with that, making it feel better for everybody. Getting back on topic, because that was a little bit of a stray, they've also changed the way the flag capture mechanics work, and they've actually added a dome to the starting areas for each team that basically makes it so that you cannot be spawn camped. Because spawn camping, even though it wasn't really an issue, it kind of was, because you would get those players that would be a little bit too aggressive and run into the spawn and try to kill players while they were spawning in back at their base. But most people had an honor system, and if you're in a decent server, you will know that those people will not camp anybody. They'll just stay at the objective and defend it, allowing for the enemy team to try to get out of their base and strategize a way to retake that objective. But either way, they decided to add this dome that kind of acts in a similar way to PlanetSide 2, where it basically makes it so you can't shoot out, you can't shoot in. It's as simple as that. Like, you can't camp it, you can't kill each other. It's just a dome that is like a biosphere. You cannot kill each other from there, which I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, on one hand, it's a good thing. On the other hand, it's not. This has been debated a lot on the forums, and I don't really have an opinion on it. I really don't know yet, because I haven't really encountered any issue where the dome came into play. So for me, it's a non-issue, because I haven't really seen anything with it. Nothing's really happened in regards to it for me. So I've never been base camped either. I've never base camped other people, so I've never really had an issue. But I guess it was a big enough problem that the developers felt the need to implement a system to deal with it. Back onto the actual flag capture mechanics. Essentially, the bleed for tickets is a lot higher for teams that own or do not own a flag. So it kind of incentivizes the actual objectives themselves. You're more inclined to want to go get those objectives so you can bleed the enemy tickets even faster. And when you actually capture a flag, it replenishes tickets for your team. So it's a significant chunk of tickets too. There's no actual real figure. It doesn't really tell you what it is. It just says, hey, you get tickets or you bleed tickets faster. It's just that simple. So that way the objective actually has more of an important role. Because a lot of the time, people will just kind of get objectives and then stagnate and build fobs somewhere and just chill out and kill each other. Whereas capturing objectives is key, and obviously having objectives is important. Where in the past, it wasn't. It was actually still possible to win, even though you didn't own most of the objectives. And now they're trying to make it more in favor of those who really own the objectives are more likely going to win, which in my opinion is a good thing. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? You think if you have all the capture points captured, you should almost be guaranteed a win. And that's essentially what they've done here. Now, they've also made some improvements to the server browser and joining a server. Not quite to the level I would like to see yet. Like, for example, I don't like the fact that when you join a server, it has to load first before it tells you whether or not you actually made it into the game. That could be very annoying because especially now with player numbers kind of dwindling as the hype is dying down, a lot of servers are full and there will only be like 1 or 2 slots available. And when you try to join it, you won't find out until like a large amount of loading. And I have my game running on an SSD, so the loading is a lot faster. But still, it's still a long time to find out whether or not you're going to get into the server, which is really annoying. I think eventually they need to obviously do what most games do, which is basically when you try to join it at first, it'll be like, not enough slots, join another server without entering loading screens at all. Hopefully that can be a thing at some point in the future. As for organizing and trying to find the servers you need, they've added columns that you can actually customize to a degree, not really customize, but you can basically just kind of organize it how you want to alleviate and simplify the process of finding what you want to find, which is, in my book, a good thing, obviously. But again, it's not exactly where I would like to see it. Obviously, the server browser needs some drastic improvement in the long run, which it will get. I mean, it's still really early in alpha, obviously, and they're focusing on a lot of things right now. The server browser isn't exactly a priority. It works as intended. I rarely have issues with it. But of course, obviously, having a ton of options to go with it would be nice. And hopefully someday we will get that. Lastly, I want to talk about the new post-processing effects that have been added to the game, which make it a lot more interesting. Essentially what they did is they made smoke grenades behave as they do in the real world, and this is something I'm actually pretty damn excited about, and I was pretty impressed whenever I watched their trailer showcasing it off. It wasn't really a trailer, it was more of a walkthrough showing off the new particle effect system and the post-processing effect system. It's so much better. Essentially, what happens now, smoke no longer just comes out in a plume from the base of the grenade. It actually jets the smoke out in a realistic way based on the grenade you are utilizing and collides with obstacles in the world. So if you have walls next to you, it will collide with those walls and it'll actually disperse in a realistic manner. So you can actually utilize it in a very tactically efficient way. Essentially, the M18 that the US Army has, it only comes out the front, like the top of the grenade, the spoon flies off and then the smoke jets out of that in one particular direction. As per the game right now, it only jets off to the right side. So if you throw the grenade, it's always going to fly out the right side of the grenade, whereas the Russian counterpart actually comes out the bottom of the grenade and the top of the grenade in 2 directions at once, basically allowing for the maximum concealment, which is nice. I mean, the Russian grenade actually reigns superior in terms of actual smoke coverage and effectiveness. The problem is it takes longer to deploy because you have to actually pull the string off and then you gotta, obviously, kind of like a chalk at it, like freaking swipe at it and ignite it, whereas the M18 is just you simply pull the pin and throw it. M18's faster, but limited smoke coverage. It works more like you would traditionally expect, and then the actual Russian grenade just plumes smoke in 2 different directions for maximum concealment really, really quickly. It's cool. I've noticed through testing that the smoke does not collide with Heskas yet. I don't know if it's going to at some point in the future. I would like to see that because obviously I would like to see smoke collide with everything. And more importantly, it doesn't have that much of a performance impact. Performance impact is almost negligible compared to what it was before, which is nice. In addition, they've also added actual gas effects from the muzzle of your weapon. So if you're firing the weapon close to obstacles or on the ground or whatever, you will actually see smoke jettison up, debris coming out from around the muzzle, simulating the actual gases exiting the muzzle. Really cool, makes the firefights feel a lot more authentic, makes the weapons feel way more real, and it just makes the whole game have that better appearance. Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up, guys. That is all the major changes within the update. And I will be following up with more videos as more updates come out. My name's been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today on this video, and I will see you guys on the next one.